Good morning from the garden. Well, it's not a garden, it's wild. A garden is intentionally cultivated, and this is vegetation gone wild. On the side of Mount Arbel here, just at the foot of it. We came yesterday on a little walk here, and I figured that I just have to get back here with the sunrise stroll and chat. These flowers are going to open up now with the sun. There's just so much color and such an abundance of flower. These clovers. I'm going to have to remember the names again that you all taught me last year. I remember one of them is called lace, something lace. It's just gorgeous here. And it won't last too long, it'll be a couple of weeks. And when enough hot sun comes here, this will all go brown. I think at least in a month's time it'll be pretty. It will be at the end of its tether of flowering. It's a late spring because of all the cold weather. Cold, wet weather. The rain obviously was a huge blessing. Another feature of the garden, the beehives. Right here. And our setting today for the reading from the prophet Daniel is a garden. But that was the setting of creation also. The Garden of Eden. The longing for the garden in the Middle East, in the desert climate. The garden is really an extraordinary expression of also man's dominion over nature, the gift first of all of creation, and also man's husbandry, managing enough water to keep the garden thriving in the midst of the aridity. And allowing it all to flourish. Those are nice words, you know, flourish. There's a different one in here. And there are white clovers over here. We saw mostly red so far. We're in clover, you know. It's a great expression, at least in Ireland. I'm not sure what this is here. Such a richness. And it's the place God wanted for us in the book of Genesis, creation. And we see today great injustice in the garden. Grave injustice. With multiple layers of wrongdoing. Threatening an innocent person with all kinds of force and destruction of reputation. Violence, false accusation. The story of Susanna. I should have checked this out beforehand, but it just came to mind that the word Susanna, the name Susanna, has to do with joy. And there she is, completely helpless. Here we have a different one. All these petals are down, waiting for the sun to come up, and they'll lift up in their full bloom. This story has so much resonance in our hearts. So much compassion for the innocent victim. And really a paradigm for a lot of human behavior. The exploitation of the weak and the innocent, which with all our development still goes on. Wholesale, aided and abetted by all the instruments at our fingertips, powerful instruments of communication and of deceit. Deceit is a big part of today's story. So what do you do in front of all of this? There are a couple of key words in there in the story that shed a lot of light. And one is that these old guys who are following the lust of their heart are not raising their mind to God. They're not looking up to God. This is very interesting, you know, because afterwards when Susanna is being condemned, she lifts up her thoughts to God. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. From whence shall come my help? My help shall come from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And these old guys are really also directly very suffering victims of their own sin. Because what started out as satisfaction of one desire has brought them to commit acts of violence and deceit, false accusation in public, establishing a mock trial. So they're sinking deeper and deeper. Their own persons are being completely undone. Their integrity is wasted. It's lost. To rebuild that would be an impossible task. Maybe one of you is a botanist or a garden lover, and you'd have a list of all the different flowers we saw now this morning. We should probably also be careful of the very conclusion of the story, because we would tend to rejoice and be thrilled about the final ending of these two guys and the triumph of the innocence of Susanna, which in itself is amazing and beautiful, and the bravery of one young person who stood up against the corrupt judges. The great calling of young people to follow conscience and not being weighed down. And the longing for ultimate justice, for complete redemption, also of the worst criminal. The longing for true salvation for mankind. Because the story of Susanna has also often been interpreted as an image for, and it's actually in the language of the story of God's chosen people, in the midst of the Gentiles staying faithful to the commandments, no matter what the persecutions have been. And then it's easy to understand how this can be seen of the church, the bride of Christ, the chosen people in the Old Testament, the spouse of God, and how other kingdoms tried to ravish her, and so also with the church throughout the centuries. And the biggest ravishing happens not so much from the outside, but from the inside. From the pride, from interior corruption of hearts. Those elders who should have been people of justice, who were friends of the king, friends of, so blessed with so many gifts. So there are many, many dimensions to this story that allows a lot of pondering, to become a blessing for our own souls, to become a path to understand the way of redemption, which is not going to be done by political organization definitively. It's going to be a gift from on high. And it's also going to be revealed in a garden. After the terrible battle of the Garden of Gethsemane and the triumph of the Garden of Easter morning, where a woman is there to meet her Redeemer. And he will invite her to turn her eyes up to heaven. Do not cling to me here. An extraordinary connection between all these gardens. The mystery of Revelation is so well knitted together, it's extraordinary, filled with light, filled with delight. People, I think our time is up today, but what a beautiful morning, beautiful place. Thank you so much for joining, for spreading the word. A lot of people are helping to spread the word, and that's good. It's nice for people to have contact here with the Holy Land. Nice for people to have the joy of a sunrise, and especially the light coming from the scriptures, and that's the passage of the gospel today. The light of the world. But we'll get to that later in the Mass, maybe in other moments. It's over to Instagram now, people. God bless you. See you later, alligators. As we walk through the paths of life, I fear no evil, because you are there with me. Your rod and your staff guide me.